On your marks, set, go. Okay, good morning, guys.
Wait.
Not wait, I'm streaming. It's too late. No.
It's not live.
It's about a 15 seconds, 20-second delay. Okay, now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting our project, and on our project, we're going to be, this is going to be slightly funny though. You're going to see a question, you'll ask me a question that was 20 seconds earlier than what I said it, but it's fine. Alright, so to start a new project, file, new project, or you click on this pretty button over here. So we're going to start the new project. It is a Java application that we're working with, and we are going to be calling it, we're going to be creating a card game. So we're going to say card game, and this is for object-oriented programming, so URP 101. So this is our start of our URP. So card game URP 101. I should maybe call it the other way around, because the main point of this is to begin URP 101, and I'm just going to call it card game. And we're not going to create a main class for now, because we're going to recreate our GUI interface. We're going to do that a bit later. So I'm going to save this in our shared drive that we're working with. This will be available on Google. I am having a bit of problems at the moment with having two different shares that seem to be pointing to different locations. Blah blah blah, my problem. Okay, so we're in Matric 2019, and we're going to be creating it inside here. URP 101 card game. Finish. Now that we've created our project, the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating our entity class, which is our object class. So we want to create a card. So my concept here that I'm thinking in my head is I know that in a card game you get dealt a certain number of cards, but now every single card is similar in one way or another. So in other words, every card has what? When we look at a card game, a card has a suite. I don't know if that's, is that how you spell suite in a card game? Suit, thank you. Thanks for yeah. So we know now who the gambler is here. Okay. We got in the suit. Suit. The suits of the card, for example, would be hearts or something like that. So you got to have the suits of the card. So we were looking at what attributes we need to keep track of, and what do you call the value of the card? Like if it's a king, an ace, a 1, a 2. Is there a special word for that? Or is it just, okay, I'm just going to call it value right now. I don't know if there's a special word for the value of a card, like if it's an ace, a king, a queen, a 2, a 3, a 4. So value is okay. Alright, so every single card will have a suite and a value. And we're also actually going to assign a picture to it. Now, bear with me on the picture side. We're going to work with the picture at a later stage. On this suit, on the suit, what data type would a suit be? Yes, Al? Okay, then for now you're going to have to watch because I've already started live streaming. It would be difficult to cut it off in the middle. On from there, so Al, please work with Johnson or Chippy, okay? Now, on the suite value in the picture, these are going to be different values. A suite, which would be hearts, what data type do you think that would be? What data type would a suit be? Anyone? Okay, well, it would be a string, because if we are going to store the value hearts, well, technically we could actually store it. So if I stored hearts, clubs, and spades, well, and then diamonds, right? What's the diamonds one? They're just diamonds. If I stored it like that, we would make the data type a string to store that information. But if, for example, I could actually replace these so that 1 would represent hearts, 2 clubs, 3 spades, 4 diamonds, and then I could just have it as being an integer. So if I did it as a value storing it like that, so you guys could make the choice on how you would want to store it. For example, another option that I could have for storing the value. So when you're creating your attributes or your fields, you also take a look at what data type it could be. I could also just have this as being the character H, the character C, and the character S and D. Which what data type would that be? That is your CHAR. So you guys are going to plan your layout like this. Value would obviously be an integer, the value that it represents. Obviously an ace would be a little bit higher, but we would work with that. And a picture I'll get to a little bit later stage. So these are our fields. So when you want to create this class, you start off by right-clicking on your package, new. I'm just going to create a package first. I'm going to call it pack, my working class actually. Okay. And inside my working, I'm going to create a new Java class. So you just right-click new, and you go to Java class. So you right-click on your package, whatever you want to work with, new Java class. And this Java class I want to call card. So this is going to be my card class. Now every single card has attributes. Now the first thing you do, here it tells me which package it's part of, here it tells me what class it is, and here it goes through the attributes. You can technically do these anywhere, it doesn't actually have to be in this order, and then afterwards you'll go through methods. I like doing it in this order. You guys can technically add attributes at the end, you can add attributes anywhere. Just for the sake of keeping things structured for now, I would create my attributes first and then my methods afterwards. So the first attribute we want, if we go back to our plan, is we want a suit. And I'm going to use the character method to represent my suit. So in other words, H represents hearts, C clubs, S spades, and D diamonds. So I'm going to create it. Now, if you go as char suite, that is you having created or declared an attribute for your card class. The only problem is that for a char class, you'll need to make it, for attributes, you would normally give what's called an access modifier. So I'm going to comment this out just so that you guys can understand it, so you guys can follow it a bit better. The first thing you have is you have your access modifier, which means who can access the documents, or this thing. If you leave it blank, it is actually defaultly protected. Okay, so I'm not going to move this up just so I can have them above each other. The next thing you would have is you would have your data type. And the last thing you would have is you would have your name that you're giving it. So this is the name that you would refer to this thing. So my first attribute is my suit attribute, and my suit attribute is private, meaning no one can access it from outside. So from outside this class, I can't directly access it. Sorry, excuse the coughing. So now the next thing I want in mind is I want value, which we know is going to be an integer, and then we want a picture, which just trust me on for now. I'm going to make it a string. I'll explain it at a later stage on that regard. Okay, so private, I want this one to be an integer, and this will be the value, and then we want private a string, and this will be the picture. Okay. So what we've got here is we've got our different attributes along the lines here. So we've got a suit, a value, and a picture. Now that means every single one of our cards here has a value. So every single one of our cards has a suit, a value, and a pic. So we can create multiple instances of it. I'm now going to create my method. Now, to create my methods, the first thing you're going to do is I suggest you do is you press Alt Insert. Alt Insert is a legendary shortcut. It allows you to do a lot of things automatically. So if I now go to my constructor, and you'll see there, if I say I want to create a constructor, I can generate it without ticking any of them. And this is called a default constructor. So I'm just going to now first create my constructors. And the first one that we're creating is called a default constructor, meaning we don't have any values of it yet. We just want to construct a card. So when you construct a card, we give it a default values. Now, for matric level, our default values we literally just set as being blank. So we can make this the suit a space. We can make the value the value is equal to 0, and we make a string equal to blank. Okay, so defaultly, or we can make this actually, let's rather do null. He doesn't like null. I have to give it some form of character. Alright, so I've now given default values to all my attributes. A default constructor should do that, so if you don't know all the values yet or what you want to send them as, you do that. So that is a default constructor. Another new term that you have to get used to is what's called a parameterized constructor. Now what that means, you get different ones. The first one I'm going to do is going to be a fully parameterized, and a fully parameterized is when I go Alt Insert, I want to generate my constructor, and I want to choose all 3 of my fields, and you'll see there that it receives suit, value, and picture as my constructor. Now, going on from there, I am going to now create another constructor, and this one's going to call a partially parameterized constructor. Very confusing, right? Okay, I will help out. Oh, okay, special. And that would be, for example, if you only received the value and the suit no picture, or if you only received value. So if you only received value, which means you would receive only the value through as a parameter. So you could create any sort of level of combinations of this, but you'll only receive the value through, and the rest of them, so the suite, you would set to be blank. You would also set the picture to be blank. So anything you didn't receive through and the parameter you sent through to be blank. So that's what that's what I've done here. So now I've created a card which is blank. The next concept that we've got here is your okay, I'm actually going to leave this for now here. I'm going to look at how we're going to actually use this. So we're going to create our GUI now. So in my other class, I'm going to right click new JFrame form, and I'm going to call this my GUI. Now in my GUI, I'm going to call this package Pacman, just because I can. We actually need to create an instance of our card. So now I'm going to create just a very, very basic screen here. I'm going to create a panel on the bottom. Okay, let me first set my layout because we worked with layouts last year. We're going to set our layout to be border layout, meaning things can pop into north, east, south, west, center. And I'm going to put a panel in the north. Oh, that was in the center, my bad. So I'm going to put a panel in the north, and I'm going to put a text area in the center for now, just so I can show what's happening. And I'm going to put there, in here, I'm going to make this layout to be flow layout, so things will just pop in after each other. I'm going to put 3 buttons in here, button 1, button 2, button 3. Now in the 3 buttons that we got here, I'm going to call this card 1, card 2, I'm going to put the next one here, card 3. So when you tap card 1, it will pop up in here values of card 1. When I tap card 2, and card 3. But now what we need to do is we actually need to create our cards. So I'm just going to delete all these comments because I don't like these comments here. I'll just keep myself as the author. Now, what we want to do is we want to create 3 instances of the card. Now I know Enzo and a couple of other new students might have already done this, because they worked from a different order that we've done something here. But we, instead of doing it like this, they would create an array and there would be a manager class. Right now we're just going to learn how to create instances of things. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to say private card, and I'm going to call it card 1. So again, I'm doing the exact same thing as I was doing here, and you guys have been doing this. Card is red underlined. The reason why is I didn't press Control Spacebar. And you'll see when I press Control Spacebar, card is there, and when I double click it, it will import working.card, because they're not in the same package, meaning that I can't just directly refer to them because they're in different packages. So I have to use Control Spacebar and I have to import it. So I've got card 1, I'm just going to go comma card 2, comma card 3. And then what that's done is it would have created all 3 cards, or declared all 3 cards. Now realize, declaration is one thing. Remember when we created variables, and you should have already known this, you have the declaration and you have the initialization. So here we have declared, we declare the fields, or the attributes, or the whatever you want to call them, right? And here we need to initialize them. Same thing here, we declare them up here in our as our attributes, and we initialize them in our constructor. So the purpose of a constructor is to initialize the fields, or attributes, or properties. Wait, many names. Right. So now in here it's the same thing. Our card 1, card 2, card 3 has been declared, and these are declared as our fields, or attributes, or properties. But now we need to initialize them in our constructor. So you'll see our constructor here first initializes our GUI components, and that's generated code. And that components was generated by our design here. When we dragged and dropped this and created this, it was generated, code was done in here. And in our main, it runs an instance. It creates a new instance of our GUI, which gets our GUI class to run. In here, we are going to generate, here we are going to now initialize our cards. And I'm going to show you the initializing of the cards with the different values. So for example, card 1, I'm going to use, so equals, you say new, because you can't just go equals 10 of hearts, because it's not a string, it's not a data type, it's actually a complicated thing with multiple different attributes. So you use the constructor, and use the new constructor by saying new, so you're creating a new object. So class is a blueprint of something. When you go new, you're creating an instance of it, which is creating an object of it. So I'm now going to go new, and I'll say I want a new card, and you'll see there that it will give me 3 options. I can use my default constructor, so this shows me what I can use. I can use my default constructor, I can use my partially parameterized constructor, or I can use my fully parameterized constructor. So in this case, I want to use my fully parameterized constructor, and the first thing it asks me is for the character suite. So I want to make this one being a heart, so the character suite is H. The value of it is going to be 10, so it's technically a king. So 10 is fine, and the picture will be 10 hearts. Now I realize I haven't taken into consideration your king, queen, jack having the same value assigned to it. So I haven't taken that into my problem solving yet, so I will look at later how I'm going to solve that in that regard. My guess is I can either change it from an integer to another data type, or for example I could make a jack equal 10, a queen equal to 11, and a king 12, and an ace an ace 13. But then what I need to do then is I then need to, in the other sentence or other structures, change the values down to 10 if I was working with that. But anyway, that's not now. Now we're just dealing with the object orientation. How we plan on dealing with that will be at a later stage. So now our card 2 we're going to do slightly differently. In our card 2 we're going to use our parameterized constructor, so not our fully parameterized, just our semi-parameterized, and I'm going to give it the value 7. So here we don't have a fully parameterized constructor, we only have a partially parameterized constructor, and obviously here we can also make our card 3 equal to a new card, and we can just use our default constructor, meaning there's no values given to it. So you'll see here I've now initialized all 3 of my cards. So I've used this object and I can create 3 different objects on there. But now I actually need to use this object. I need to actually display, so when I click on my card 1, I want to display the value of card 1. Now I'm going to actually start by showing you what will happen. Now remember, I don't like you guys coding in here because I like to group all our methods together up here. So I'm going to create a method here called, the reason why you don't code there is because then it's underneath all the generated code. So to often find it and to work with it, it is quite challenging. Also, if you need to recall it, you have to also pass through an event. If you need to use the event, sure, but most of our level coding, we're not going to be using the event and checking what the event was about. So I'm going to create 3 methods. I'm going to create public void display card 1. I'm going to create another method called the exact same thing. Well, not exact same thing, obviously, but card 2 and then card 3. So we're going to have the 3 different methods there to display. Now, remember your action elements you should rename. So my JText area, I'm going to change the variable name of my JText area. I'm going to call it txt display because we need to refer to it in code. So whenever you have to refer to something in code, you must rename it. It just makes life easier. So txt display dot set text. And just for interest's sake, I'm just going to say set text is equal to card 1. Now it's going to say to me incompatible types. So you actually have to refer to the toString and bear with me on that. So our txt display is equal to card1.toString. I want to copy this down to the other 2 methods, and this time I'm going to say card2 and then card3. Okay, so we've done that. We've created 3 different so 3 different methods displaying 3 different things of cards. Now when I press play on this and I run this program, you'll notice, okay, it will open up on a different screen, not on my main will open on my main screen, so not the one that is being recorded. So I just drag it across quickly. You'll see there's my GUI layout. Now when I press card 1, you know what's the fundamental thing that I've got to do? I do this way too often. I've got to map the card 1 method to actually run display card 1. And I've got to map the button card 2 so that the action, I've added an action. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. Technically in the generated code, it creates an instance of your action performed and so forth, and it then runs a method based on that. So just bear with me on that. So now if I go back to my design, now card 2 we want to work with, we then want to run display control spacebar. Please remember to use your control spacebars. If you don't, you're being silly. Card 3, same thing, display card 3. So now let's try that again. This time it should hopefully work a bit better. Okay, so now I've got my class here. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller because that's actually a bit too big. Okay, so now when I press card 1, you'll see there that it says there working.card. So it first tells me what the class type is, what data type, what class this object is, and then it gives me the RAM location. That's pretty useless, isn't it? Like, why on earth? We don't need the RAM location. We don't need, but we do need, okay, what data type it is, but or class type. But that's not anything that's used to us as a user. So what we do is we override the toString. So now card class, there's a default card class. So what we actually do is we want to override and the toString returns a text representation of a object. So now to do that, I go Alt Insert. I can say there's a toString already there. I can just go Enter, Enter, and then it will already automatically create me a toString. Now, where it will return the suite, the value, the picture. But right now, this is going to look pretty ugly. So I'm going to make this look a bit prettier, and I'm going to do that a couple of ways. One of the ways I can do is I can do a switch case, which I always forget how to do. I suppose I should remember how to do a switch before I actually show you guys that. Might even allow me a shortcut to it. It's not going to allow me to. I've forgotten how to do it. Anyway, you can do a switch, but in this case, I'm just going to do an if statement. I'm going to say if suite. So I'm going to create a string. I want to say defaultly it is hearts. Then I want to say if suite dot equals it's a character, so we can go equals C, then it's a clubs, so then S is equal to clubs, else if is equal to D, it's diamonds. So I'm wasting a bit of time here. Else if suite is equal to clubs, diamonds, hearts, spades. S, then it is going to be S is equal to spades. Okay, so we've covered all our bases there. Defaultly it is hearts, otherwise we just look for the other ones to see that it's that. So we're going to say suite is equal to, now instead of going that, we're just going to say the value. So I want to delete what's here because I don't like that. I just want to actually display right now the value plus of space plus S. So I'll now say 10 of hearts or whatever it might be. So now when I run my program again, I've overridden the toString. So you'll see it adds in that override notation. And when I open this up here and I make this a little bit bigger and I click card 1, it'll now say 10 of hearts. When I click card 2, 7 of hearts. Because I didn't actually stipulate it, defaultly it goes to hearts. 0 of hearts, meaning that it hasn't been actually initialized as anything. So there we go, we've got all our 3 cards working, so we've got our objects inside there. Now, this is phase 1. Okay, it's nearly phase 1, it's not quite complete with phase 1 of mine. I have a 0 and stuff like that. Like here I didn't initialize them. I want to show you other ways that you can initialize values in this. Another way I'm going to show you is using your setters. Because this is private, these are all private, I can't go here. So for example, if I want to now give card 3 some values, I can't go card 3 dot. It doesn't give me the options, or it gives me these methods here because everything else is hidden. So what I do is I create a method here. For example, if I say alt insert getters and setters, and I generate getters and setters for all my classes. So sorry, for all my fields. Now when I've done that, it will now, I'm able to here go card 3 dot set value to equal to 12, let's say, and card 2 is equal to dot set value. So we want to set value, we want to set suit there to be spades, let's say. Okay, so then now I've managed to change those two values using the setters. The same thing would happen with so I want card 3 suite here as well, dot set suite. So it allows me to manipulate the values that have gone through there. So in this case I'm going to make it a clubs. So I've changed the values of the card 1, 2 and 3. Sorry, so 2 and 3 I've changed now the values after I've already initialized them here. So you can change the values there. The other thing I wanted to stipulate here, when we get value, we could technically manipulate the values, so 10, 11, 12 will all just be 10. Or 10, 11, 12, 13 will all just return 10. But I'm not going to get into that now because that would be on a hard problem solve or how I plan on doing the GUI, which I haven't fully worked out yet actually. But let's move it out. So if I press play now, and I now drag it up here, you'll see then now when I press card 3 it's no longer 0, it's going to be the 12 of clubs. When I press card 2, 7 of spades, card 1, 10 of hearts. So you create setters and getters of your instance so that you can get that working. Alright, I'm going to leave this here. Our next phase that we're going to go through is we're going to move away from our cards being in here. We're going to work towards having a management class, which allows us to have classes in a different location. I would also then go on how to, I'll choose on that, but this will be step 1. Yeah, I'm also going to be creating a playlist called Matrix 2019, so you guys can look, and that will be specifically your stuff that we are adding onto there. Right, goodbye.